All right, we are back with another episode of Justin BS Podcast. I have Craig Thornton on today. So Craig and I have a bit of a history. We worked together. I was at my previous employer for 10 years, Craig, and I would come into your office and cry sometimes about not being able to find stuff. So we're going to talk a lot about supply chain today and leadership, but can you give us a quick elevator pitch of kind of your career up to this point?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Brent. And those were 10 wonderful years that we spent together. I've been in supply chain for 25 years. I graduated from Georgetown University, played football there, and kind of went into supply chain, honestly, by accident, went in construction because my family had a history of being in construction. Jumped into that, ended up working for a heavy civil construction company for my first 5, 6 years. That's where I learned on the hands experience and perspective. And then kind of from there into government services and then where you and I were. And now I'm at Air Products, been there for 2 years. I'm the supply chain director for two of our business units there. So yeah, it's great when you could say, yeah, I buy things, and people are like, well, that must be a lot of fun. And I kind of grind my teeth a little bit. I go, it is fun, but there's a lot more to it than just buying things, as you know. So yeah, it's a really cool career. I love it. I love the people, and certainly it really teaches you a lot about yourself. So yeah, it's a great career.
Mm. Yeah, I think supply chain gets a bad rap sometimes. I agree with you in the simplicity of the nature, but I do think people after COVID realized the importance and how easily it can disturb the entire world.
Yeah.
With, I mean, it was insane. I've never heard the word supply chain used so much, and people probably didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, it became, for lack of a better word, valuable. Whereas before let's just be honest. I mean, we're utilized, and I say we affectionately, supply chain is usually we're the ones who delay everything, which in most cases is not. But we're also the reasons why things aren't performing well. But when that happened, I got to be honest with you, and I think we really found out very quickly how valuable that is, and you started to really understand how the function is so essential. And it actually gave some people, a lot of the folks that we dealt with, a lot of perspective because of the people that we served, as you know, in the power industry. It was like, listen, I can't get to this. Can you get to this? And something as simple as, you know, hand sanitizer and dispensers. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like, if I knew any better, I know how to build it and just do this myself. And I mean, we did everything, Brandon, from understanding what the mixtures were, how to mix it, how to just ship it. And it really taught me specifically, wow, this is more valuable than I probably estimated it to be, because that was something. I mean, and you know, again, people were charging at the wazoo on every single known commodity, and it became very valuable. But the function, to me, I think it put a probably a good spotlight. I mean, there's obviously negatives too, as you know. I mean, that it's unfortunate in some regards, but I mean, if that kind of galvanized a lot of the people to understand, like, wow, I really need to pay attention to this function more. So if anything, we got some good publicity from it, and it was actually it was a pretty wild experience. I mean, I could tell you some of the stuff that I did during that time, which you're probably aware of. I was picking up dispensers and tests and taking them out to our offices, and hell, I was even putting them in the offices because we needed people, essential personnel, as you remember, to go in.
Yeah.
So we had to make it work.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy how quickly the alcohol companies even switched gears to make hand sanitizer because it wasn't that far off, right? I remember buying bottles of stuff at like Rutter's because it was the only,
Yeah.
it was like the vodka hand sanitizer that was available.
Yeah, yeah, you're sitting there smelling it. I'm like, man, this tastes this. I don't know if I'm not supposed to drink this, but yeah, I mean, ingenuity was pretty wild because you had some companies that had no business doing it, decided to diversify in it and say, you know, we have the like you just said, we had companies who really had no business of doing this stuff and said, well, wait a minute, I can build this and get this material and actually formulate dispensers, which, you know, everyone wanted the nice sanitizers, the automated ones. And we had the ones where basically they were manual, where you pumped them with your foot and hey, it worked. I mean, you
Yeah.
probably got it on your shirt, but I mean, it worked.
Yeah, no doubt. So you mentioned 25 years in supply chain. What's the most significant change you've seen in the industry, and how have you adapted to keep up with that change?
Change now that I've seen is, believe it or not, there's been a significant emphasis on value and delivery and innovation. The
Mm,
pricing has not, price has always been, as you can recall too, has been a driver. I'm noticing now more than ever that's going away. It's about innovation, it's about lead times, and it's also about the relationship. I mean, we have partners in the industry now that 10, 15 years ago, when you look at the value, you probably would have sat there and said to yourself, I'm not really sure we need to use a company like this. I just want a low price and just deliver it and be done with it. It's gone so much more. It's more holistic, Brandon, more
mm,
than ever, because basically it's like, hey, I want a relationship and I want you to come with us. Simply because the days of we should have 6 or 7 suppliers per different commodity, different goods, different services, it's shrunk. I mean, I realized that probably over the last 3 years, it's like you really have to look at, for lack of a better word, in the supply chain. We got to look at tiered approaches. Like you got to have a tiered type of supply base that actually wants to partner with you, wants to deliver, wants to innovate, and the pricing that comes later. And
yeah.
we have partners now that it's not, you're not being judged on price anymore. The first thing I'd say is, okay, have we done work with them? Yes. Have they delivered? Yes. I mean, are they doing something that is going to help us deliver on time, but also help us as a business and bring them along the way? Yes. Done. Well, what about the price? I go, if the price is within where it needs to be, I'm okay with that, but I'm not going to sit here and barter. I mean,
Mm,
what ends up happening is, Brandon, you're probably seeing it too, is I think that puts you in a disadvantage down the time, as you know, when you continue to go back, and it's the old school mentality. And I can say that because I've been in 25 years. I just got to beat them down. No, no, because respectfully, that doesn't work anymore. I mean,
mm,
realistically, where things need to go is got to build a relationship, build a company that wants to go with you, because there's companies that are very happy being in the box that they are, which is fine. But yeah, it's the trend is now more value add than anything
mm.
else. And hey, we all want to save money, but also I'm looking at it from the approach of don't saturate your supply chain base. It's now become such a smaller bucket to play in, which I like. I mean, it shrinks your world a little bit, but it also puts you in a much better advantage to execute. Much better.
So the word partnership actually is a real thing now. Like, because it was kind of a buzzword, right? But you're mentioning
Yeah.
value outside of price. And I think that's the hardest thing to sell for people who don't understand that. Because I don't know how many times we didn't win a bid for some stupid number, right? Or somebody undercut the entire group by so much. It's very obvious that something in the scope was missed.
Yeah.
But all I want to know is at the end of that project, did you actually save money compared to the original budget that we laid out? Because we hit our budget almost all of the time.
Hmm.
And that answer is usually no, right?
Yes.
But no, we can
100%.
never go back at the end of that to have that
No,
conversation.
no, and again, it's like anything else. And suppliers are they have ingenuity just like we do. Okay, fine. If that's just the percentage you want to cut off, that's fine. Don't think they don't have contingency, because they do. They have reserves just like we do. And
Yeah.
I realized, among at least moving over to a different type of industry, because I'm more manufacturing, discrete manufacturing, which is pretty wild. um, there's your level of scrutiny now is so much more refined. And when you see where the market is, and if someone just has a significant undercut, you're almost of the mindset to be like, good luck to you, because there's just no way. And
Correct.
in most cases, they're not going to make it. But you're right. I believe in the time that even when we were together, that was more the buzzword. Well, they're a partner, and I've seen more of an emphasis on that. Hell, I've been in conversations where it's genuine and it's real, and you actually see it like within a week's time. Whereas, oh, well, if we have
Mm.
opportunities, we'll let you know. I'm like, no, we have opportunities next week. And you start to find out very quickly, are you in or you out? And um, again, when you're in that type of discussion with some of your supplier partners, you'll find out pretty quick. But I always felt where we were, and this is, and I say that affectionately, you and I, when we were in the industry together, it just wasn't like that. I think we were just trying to build something and whatever it took, let's just get relationships moving, but it wasn't sustainable. It was so I'll just say it was transactional versus
Yeah.
being sustained. So yeah, we're that's kind of where it is right now. It's where the market leads and the value is significant.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that value also comes with the word maturity and what I mean, because your life being easy obviously is done a lot by the supplier. So not having to babysit suppliers and understand the importance of schedule, delivery. Obviously, we talked about some of those, but even just upfront, no surprises, understanding what change order management looks like. Like I don't think people put enough stock into the maturity level and the language that's used, with
Mm-hmm.
your direct customer and even helping them sometimes through some of that. We're seeing that, like, coming from the industry of power, we had, I think, very mature project management approaches because we had to. That was like,
Yes,
you had to hit things and they had to be hit and you had to get back online, right? Where I think
100%.
coming over to the industrial side, it's a little bit looser probably than what I was used to on the other side.
No, I agree with you. I think now what I'm seeing more and more often is understanding risk and understanding what that costs, but
Mm,
also understanding that you have a supplier that's willing to take that on with you, but also provide almost guidance to say, listen, if you want us to go down this route, this is what we can do. Or if you don't, yeah, we can probably, just give an example, if it's, it could be a pump, it could be a valve, it could be anything. Hey, this is your output. This is what you want us to do for your flow. Great. We could do something different. It'll probably save you in the long term. It's going to cost a little bit more. However you want to do, it's up to you. But what you're specking out sometimes, it really does. It's refreshing to me because the when you have a supplier turns around like, listen, you're over specifying what you want. This is what you really should have.
mm,
And I remember sometimes we would just disregard. This is what the customer wants. It's now become, hey, you know what? Let me take that and let me go back. And is it more? Well, no, it's not. But it'll actually it's the same warranty, it's the same flow. It actually it's cheaper and the longevity, it's proven. We've had customers that come back and like, no one's ever come back and actually said that to us before versus, yeah, it sounds good. Just go ahead and do it. So that's a partnership to me. I mean,
yeah.
I'm in these discussions now where that language of risk is now become mutual versus the other side of it, which is okay, what's our risk and what if they don't deliver versus now it's, hey, it's mutual. So yeah, that's definitely been a change.
Yeah, that's really good. We do that quite a bit. I mean, we consider it, it's the word value engineering, even though we're not engineering in the time, but really, leaning on the subject matter expertise of whoever you're working with and actually trusting them, right? Like, what would you do? Or where are we stupid? Or why are you building it with this type of metal? Like, you're worried about price and you want everything in stainless. Like, those two things don't go together.
Brandon, I've seen stuff where, yeah, well, we want to do the chrome and the grinding. I go, I'm just going to ask a question. This is me in a meeting. I'm like, the hell do you need chrome for? And they're like, well, I go, is this an aesthetic thing? And a supplier will ask you now. I'm like, do you need that? And I'm like, well, it's aesthetic. And I'm like, no, we don't need that. And again, I'll ask. So is this something that's feasible? It's more difficult. We could do that, but again, I agree with you. It has become more of a two-way street than one way.
Hmm.
Over these years, I've noticed that more, and I'm excited about it because I can call where I sit. Any one of the folks I deal with um, can actually make a phone call and say, "Hey, listen, this is what we're looking to do. Does this make sense to you?" Versus, "This is what I want. Just go ahead and do it." It's
Yeah.
totally different. The mentality's changed.
Yes. And I know, so second question here, I see supply chain as, well, a lot of parts of business is data driven and relationship driven. And I know you're quite the data person as well. So how do you strike your balance between using data to help you make decisions, but also obviously procurement and supply chain is so relationship heavy.
Mm-hmm.
What does that balance look like for you?
Great question. We're becoming more of a metric-based organization now where I'm at, which is really good. But that's basically it's your basics, right? It's your price, it's your on-time delivery, and then it's your overall engagement with project management. So I'm just gave you three that we've looked at. We look at the data drivers are pretty simple. Is okay, and again, I have no problem talking through it. Is okay when we issue the PO, what's the turn time for confirmation? What's the turn time for drawings?
Mm,
What's the turn time for this? Brandon, you know this. Again, the different change. It's like I just give me the cut sheets and let's go. Now we're now saying specifically, this is when you need it. This is the designated times. Can you give this information? We're literally looking at the data drivers of when you receive a purchase order versus, oh, well, how much did we spend? That doesn't do anything for me. I mean, I
yeah,
look at, show me the last 6 transactions that we've done with this one company. How did they do? Were they timely? Did they input all their deliverables? It's become so much more metric based where those deliverables now become measurements. And, the ones that we really highly regard that are our partners with us, and this goes both ways, we start now, you just hit relationships. We are now moving into kind of the mindset of you got to meet quarterly or,
yeah,
or, or, or,
right,
or twice a year to sit down and say, hey, Brandon, this is where we are. These are our orders. This is where we've done well. And I say we always, not
yeah,
you, because when I say you, it automatically puts a person on the defense. I said, this is where we are. Did we do something here to screw you up? And guess what? We find out very quickly. Well, you didn't get that one revision done on the engineering drawing. And I sit there, I'm like, okay, well, that's on us. What about this one? That was on
right,
us. What do we need to do to improve? So yeah, the mix of data and then going to relationship. I mean, I don't want to say it's 50-50 because it really isn't. I mean, to me, it's almost, there's a 40% driver on data and the other 60 is relationship, because if you don't have that relationship, how the hell are you going to give them the information they need on the data? Because they'll just disregard,
right,
especially if second time you're talking to them all year.
yeah,
I always feel that that's a good mix. Um, I mean, we have, all these ERPs can give you all that information, but I'm always like, I don't need to know the spend. I need to know when we issued this, how did they perform
yeah,
from initiation to close out, right? So yeah, it's become more holistic, but again, I like it because it's a little more simplistic
yeah.
than what it used to be.
No, and I think it gets out of the way. You kind of, I love data for that reason because it doesn't care. Doesn't have emotion, right? It's just, how many, I was always delivering the facts, even though people don't want to hear them sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are behind on schedule. Don't yell at me. This has nothing to do with our relationship. So I'm
Yeah.
with you. And then you can say, listen, this is where you're doing great. This is where you're doing terrible. This is where we can help. And it just, I don't know, it's very factual. But it can still have a lot of personality behind it. It's just kind
Hmm.
of how you deliver that.
Yeah, it's the same way. We measure ourselves from an operational perspective too. Like, and I know you'll appreciate this too. Is, well, we're late on we could be late on any type of incremental part, any critical part. First question I ask is, I'm like, all right, when was the demand put in? When did we put a requisition? When did you do
Right.
this? And people are like, why are you asking this question? I'm like, because that's where it starts. If it doesn't start right, we don't end right. And
Yeah.
in some cases we found, hey, we're not getting it done nearly as quickly as we should. And that, to me, it's not an incriminating, but it's also a good data point. It's like, hey, we really got to get on our A game to execute much faster than we have. So yeah, no, 100%. I love you hit it around that. Data is great because it doesn't discriminate. It is what it is. And
Exactly.
yeah,
It's not
there's
personal.
no, 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 100%.
Uh, you've had various leadership roles. What's one leadership lesson you've learned the hard way that has stayed with you throughout your career?
I will say perspective. Um,
Oof.
Perspective is pretty significant because I realized this probably a little bit earlier in my career when when you're in a situation and you're respectfully in the office, and we were always in the office, drinking coffee, and our folks out in the field or even where I'm at in the production floor, I really started to understand. Probably, I'd say a hard lesson was well, we're just making purchases, we're transacting, we're making things happen. And I didn't realize that, yeah, I was doing that. And I felt like, this is me being a buyer. Um, I thought I was doing a really good job, right? I started realizing when I went out to the job site then these are all the items that I purchased. This is my deal. And I got a foreman saying, Craig, met him, very nice guy. Come here, I want to show you something. Okay, fair enough. And this is just basic precast. This is like a sanitary sewer structure, real easy. And I know exactly what it is. I know what manhole number it is because I was taught the right way. And I said, yeah, I see that one right there. And he goes, you see anything that just doesn't look right to you? And I know it's a loaded question. Well, this thing is completely honeycombed. It's the concrete, like there's a crack here. He goes, what am I supposed to do with this? And then, the powerful thing about it was, we can't use this and see those guys over there. It's like a crew of four. It's their crew. Guy to put in the sub base, guy to place the structure in, guy to put everything down so they can get it done. I go, you need to understand that it makes your life a lot easier and mine if you come out to see the things that
Mm.
you buy. Because if you don't, you'll never understand the pain points that we go through. And now you got a crew sitting. Man, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean,
Wow,
it
that's
hit me
brilliant.
so hard. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, okay, I really need to understand that just because I place an order and on to the next, there's something when an order is made now, even many years ago, I always felt, be it in order for a part, a service agreement, anything, you kind of take it a little personal
Mm.
because you know who you support it, and if you know the folks who you support, you don't want to let them down. And I took that pretty personally, and that was a lesson that I had. I didn't realize that until I saw that, and I was like, noted, I got it. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I have to make sure I tell our folks this because you never learn. I mean, you and I could talk about it when I would visit you, and basically, Craig, I need you to come out here and give the team an education on supply chain. And I love doing that, but you also gain perspective, but you knew what you were doing then, even in your role too, to be like, listen, he's here to help.
Right.
You guys need to understand, but you also start to see the pressure on why people do it. And you're like, hey, we can help you with that. So yeah, perspective is massive. I learn that every day, every single day.
Yeah, that's really good. It goes from being paperwork to, like, I luckily got to do 8 years in the field. And when you are buying something and then standing in the hole with them and says, this doesn't work and this is why, and this is how much it's holding up 4, 10, 12, 20 people, right? And you're losing hours per day. It completely changes the game of one, your reliance on your suppliers when they say, I got you, right? And then they're like the last chopper out of Nam. Like, you hold on to the people in chaos that
Mm-hmm.
deliver for you. I remember my specific people who, when shit hit the fan, I could always call them in
Mm-hmm.
Georgia and wherever I was, and they would
Yeah,
deliver every time. And if you
always.
can do that, I didn't care what, like you said earlier, the cost didn't matter at that time, right? Because you
No,
can't have George the foreman up on the 11th floor screaming that he needs something stupid.
yeah, no, 100%. And you're spot on. So that to me meant so much. And even when those calls came in, we need this. We got to sorry, we got an unplanned outage. This is what's happening. What can you do? Get a crane out. This always happens on a Friday, especially with you. You got to get a crane out. Okay, what do you need? I need an all terrain.
Yeah.
I need an all terrain out. This is what we're looking for. I'm like, okay, we just got it done. And
Yeah.
again, you're right. The partnership, the relationship completely outweighs the price because guess what? When you have that kind of relationship and they deliver, you know for a fact, are you getting handled? I would get a text from like the site. I get it from you or anybody saying, we got it. We received it. Everybody's happy. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
it. That's all I care about. That's all you care
That's
about.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's never at the opportune times either. Shit always falls apart on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning
No.
when no one's pay. But if you have that relationship, someone picks up the phone, because you're right. It's a big piece of that. I didn't realize how important that was. I think early enough in my career to not yell at people. I remember Mark, my boss, would always yell at me. And like I tell this story all the time. I think my first 5 reviews were like 0 on communication on our little score sheet, because
Yeah.
he's like, you can't talk to people that way. And it took me so long to realize, like, even though I was frustrated and I could see the cliff that was coming, like it's tactful. You got to figure out a way to get it across without being a total asshole. And it took me way
No,
too long.
I agree with you. I think there's a lot to be said with how you articulate things, but you also find out pretty quickly the measure of the person you're working with and the supplier when you're in a situation like that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because there is a significance to being able to respond well and be very calm about it. You're right. And again, I'm a victim of it as well. It was the mentality that which we worked in, where we got to move. Let's just move. I'll call you right back. We get it done. We get that now, even with customers that we work with, and they're the first. I think I kind of evolved a little bit where it's like, you're awfully calm about all this. I said, well, this is what we have to do. We've already engaged the right people and everyone knows. And I think about that a lot. But yeah, I mean, you need to have the right people, the right relationships, but the perspective just literally gives it to you. It really does.
Yeah, and I think you can be calm, because I actually thought about this the other time. Is like when you go through some of that outages, I think were some of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And
Mm,
watching, I remember getting screamed at by grown men, right? When you go through traumatic situations like that, and I will
hmm
call them traumatic because they were, like,
Yeah.
everything else is easy from that point forward. Like, yes, I probably wish I wouldn't have had to go through some of the stuff, but what it did for me was like, everything else is not that difficult anymore.
Mm-mm.
Like when it is that hard and you're like, I do not want to drive to work the next day, because like this shit will not end. When you go through that and you get out the other side and you learn all the shit you from it, and it's either good, bad, or indifferent, doesn't really matter. Then you're like, the next one just gets easier, and the
It
next one
does.
just gets easier. So that's, I mean, going through some of the things and going in the grind and having to work so fast and figure things out and be on our feet. Like, I think it's honed us to like, not much is scary anymore.
No, you know what? I kind of liken it to getting calluses on your hands. I really do. It's like getting calluses on your hands, calluses that never go away because you continue to exercise them, right? I look at it as getting calloused. I been there, done that. I mean, I gave, I gave a very PG rated example, um, because again, we've been in situations where, they're not getting it done. We need to do this, and you're holding crews up. Okay, I got it. And yeah, you're run down really, really well. But then you also learn, I'm like, you know what? How do I make sure that this situation doesn't happen? But
Yeah.
also, I know how to handle it next time. I
Yeah.
know what to say. I know what to do, and that's how you learn, Brandon. And unfortunately, I think those opportunities are not as frequent as they used to be. Unfortunately, not. I think the way we engage is, a little more softer than it should be sometimes. But I always feel like having that kind of one to one, I love it. I'd rather have the discussion right next to the person,
Yeah.
more and more. And but again, this is where we are, so you kind of have to balance it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt.
So yeah, yeah.
That's good. As director of sourcing and procurement, you'd likely have a lot of tough negotiations. I'm terrible at negotiation. So what 3 tips would you have to for negotiation techniques?
Probably the first thing that I always recommend now, especially now, is first off, do your research. And
Mhm.
when I say do your research on what the buy is, even though you may already know what it is and you think you know it all because you've bought it 100,000 times. That's not the case. You may find out very quickly in the market there's A, something different. B, what you're looking at may not really suit your needs long term. And C, you may find out that, quite honestly, uh, this isn't the right fit at all. So you got to do your research, A on the product, B on the service, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, because I've noticed very quickly just sitting there and negotiating price isn't going to do it. So doing your research, on the product, understanding what the market is. No one does that nearly as much as they should. You got to look at the market, Brandon. If you don't look at the market and understand what, what's the drivers, you know, you're not going to be able to really articulate, because now it's
Sure.
articulating, hey, this is what we're buying. Um, the third, honestly, it's not so much the third, but it's the timing. It's the timing of the negotiation.
What do you mean by that?
And so what I mean by that is, if you know, is it the end of the month? Are you going to do it at the end of the month? Are you going to do it end of fiscal year, end of quarter? You need to understand the timeline of when this is going to benefit a supplier on a sale.
Mm,
When you know that, they know that, I can tell you right now, the negotiation opens wide open. Because now you're trying to help them.
yeah.
Because you could sit there, Brandon, and be in a situation where you're not expressing urgency, even though someone's probably breathing down your neck and say, "You better get this done. I need this." Um, I always find out timing's everything, right?
Oh,
Um,
wow, that's a good point.
I've realized more and more to say, "Hey, is this going to make or break their year? Is this going to be the end of their quarter? What's going to work better for them?" When you have those discussions and you just ask point blank, "Listen, I notice, this is the end of the month. Is there going to be something more beneficial for you?" Guess what? That works most of the time, because you got to be honest, and you're on this side now too. You really want to make it prior to a date, because it benefits them financially.
Yeah.
It's a Brandon, it's a win-win. That's so, the research, the timing, those are probably the top two, and probably the third, quite honestly, is, to me, once you finalize that negotiation, you always leave the door open for further development, for further products, for further service. And you don't have to provide them a damn forecast, but you could tell them, "Hey, this is great. Thank you so much, but we have this
Mm,
for ongoing." Because what that does is it literally, you just built upon a negotiation. It's no longer just a transactional relationship. You just created a relationship that you probably didn't think you had. Um, but yeah, I always look at it is the research, the timing, and kind of the value add at the end.
that's good.
Honestly, I could tell you, Brandon, probably, I'd say maybe 8, 9 years ago, that was not the thought process at all. Go back down and tell them, "If you want this job, this is where you need to be," and you would throw some arbitrary percentage at somebody. I'm sorry, respectfully, our suppliers are very smart, and the guys will turn around and be like, "Okay, how did you get that number?" And again, what that does, Brandon, it improves your credibility. It really
Yeah.
does. So I've realized more throughout my career is to be educated, to be very dangerous in understanding what the drivers are for the market, understand timing, and then say, "Hey, this is great, but we have other opportunities." The wall goes way down. It's like, "Okay, listen, this is what we can probably do." You open the doors up for both sides, and you both win. And I
Yeah.
know it's hokey, but it's real. It is very, very real that you can get the win-win.
No, love that. Yep. I'm a huge believer in that. I like competition, but not enough to step on people. I mean, I I I love everybody in our area. I mean, York, you want to talk about Lancaster, York, Pennsylvania for industrial, for what we do for a living. Like there's no better place in the whole country to be for,
Oh, best folks to deal with. You know,
yeah.
I, they're, it's salt of the earth. It's, man, they're great people for all, and these are all the folks that I've dealt with before. They're just honest, great folks, reliable.
Yeah.
Trust is big.
Yeah.
And you kind of sit there and say, I have a need, and those folks always deliver. So yeah,
Yeah.
my time
Totally agree.
there was always awesome.
As a sports fan, do you ever find parallels between playing sports and your leadership style?
Yeah, it's funny. So, being a has-been college football player, I've accepted that now. It took me 27 years to get there, but you know, yeah, I'm not one who gives my nephews and even my son, and they have all kinds of terms now that I don't even get, but they're like, "All right, Dad, we don't want to hear your stories." But I was very lucky in that, listen, I was, I was a captain in high school and one of the team leaders when I was in school too. The one thing that I realized, which was really cool, that even still it translates to me is always be willing to do anything and show that you will do it. And even now, and I know you'll appreciate this, if we have a specific issue with a supplier, one of our folks, and it could be anybody in our organization, hey, I'm not gonna be able to get to this thing. Well, can you just give it to me? And I get a look like you wouldn't believe. I go, and I kind of look into them. I go, you don't think I know how to do this? And they're like, well, we didn't really think that. I'm like, no, I got it. I always felt that if you can do something and everyone notices that you do the same type of a function that they do, like when you were doing sports, you were listen, it didn't matter if you were starting out, you're grabbing a bag. Like something
Yeah.
as simple as grabbing a bag or doing a drill. And instead of getting water, doing something like that, something so simple, but because you're one of the leaders on the team, you're not above anything, right?
Mm.
And I've always felt that now in this role that as I've moved, I always felt like don't put yourself above it. Always put yourself at the level of your folks to help them and support them. And if they can't get to it, do it for them. Don't do it because you want to show off, but do it because you genuinely want to help them. I've always felt that that really correlates to being a good leader. Um, it never, there's no task that was ever below me. And when I played, it was the same thing. Hey, we're running a drill. Do you mind? Do you mind running a route? Which is funny in itself. And I would sit there and be like, you really want me to do that? Just run a post, just give them a look. And of course, I would do that. And everyone's looking at me and go, what are you doing? I go, they need someone to give a look. And I didn't care. But always, and it's the same thing in where you're at in business. I mean, just because you sit there and you have that title doesn't mean that you're above any type of function. You're not.
Mm.
I mean, having that type of mentality really helps. And it also shows your dedication to your folks that I'll do it. Hey, I'm not getting a response by such and such. Can I get the phone number, please? I get that a lot too.
Yeah.
And the first thing that you have to say to your folks, I go, this is not a reflection of you. It's I'm supposed to do this. This is what
Right.
I'm here to help you. They say the servant leader is someone who will have the respect of his entire organization. I believe that. I mean, if you're willing to serve your folks and provide that value to them, they'll do anything for you. And so that's been very helpful for me.
Yeah, I think one of my superpowers is being extremely mechanically deficient, especially in the world I
Yeah,
live. It's because I'm in awe at what people do in our shop and in our field. Because I can't like everyone. The joke is I always hold the dumb end of the tape measure because like that's all they'll allow me to do, right? So I won't be able to. No tools am I allowed to pick up in the shop or the field.
right.
But any other, I'm with you. Any other barriers that I can do just to make things right, make your life easier because I mean, just from the trades, and we both worked with union, non-union, it doesn't really matter. I've been all over the country working with all kinds of like, it is amazing what people can do that we have little appreciation for. It blows me away,
Unreal.
which is, I'm with you there. Like I love watching people do what they do because I have no concept or have any ability to do
Yeah,
even close to any of it.
it's wild. I mean, even like now when I see our machinists or even our welders or just seeing what they do, and I ask sometimes because I can't help myself because I just want to learn. I'll say I go, did someone just like put you on this when you were a kid and say you will do this and like figure this out? Because like I'm looking at myself, I go, how did you get from
Yeah.
handling this type of machinery and having that type of precision in your craft? And they all say this, like, I learned through the trades. This is how I did it, and it's repetition. It's being open minded. I mean, just tremendous people, man. I mean,
Yes.
just great
Brilliant.
people to work with. But yeah, I love the fact that they at least tell you to stay away because I get the look. I don't get the verbal. I get the nonverbal. What are you doing here? And I have to stay within the yellow lines of our shop because I'm not allowed to go outside that. And it's like Like, did something happen? Is a part loose? What, are you mad about something? I go, no, I just checking in on you guys. So I know my limitations, which is good. It's a
Yeah.
good thing.
I love it. That's so
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
You're in the wrong part of town, boy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the eyes are great. The eyes are like, what's he doing here? And I'm like, oh, here we go. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's awesome.
it's good.
So we talked a little bit about the supply chain crisis that we've been through. How do you manage, or how do you approach managing supply chain in the midst of a crisis? Like, what's your go-to, like, you mentioned about staying calm. Do you have specific, like, do you pull out the to-do list task that you go to every time shit just hit the fan?
It's prioritization. First thing is prioritization.
Brilliant.
What is it's prioritization on what is going to continue our business continuity. What are the major commodities, major services that we have to continue our business? Um, I look at that from a project level. I look at that from a
Mm,
business level. It is prioritization. I can't tell you how many times that even the most simplistic tasks that we deal with, Brandon, the first thing I say is it could be orders, it could be projects. Okay, is this the priority? Where is this in, for lack of better, where is this in the line, right? Is this
yeah.
on the back end or is it the front end? Because at the front end, sounds like we have to prioritize and execute, right? Prioritization to me is absolutely apparent. It is grabbing the notebook. It's literally writing down, tell me what the needs are to move. I mean, Brandon, we talked about in the beginning of the discussion of when COVID hit, it was masks, hand sanitizer, and basically masks and more hand sanitizer and nitrile gloves. Which again, you can go now to Home Depot and buy, a case for like $10. We were buying, you know,
Your
hundreds of
firstborn
dollars a
child.
case. Yeah, unreal. Like if we caught wind someone had and we were buying the case, send it to the plant. We got to have them at the plant.
Yeah.
But no, I prioritization is absolutely essential.
Mm,
I really think if you don't do that, what ends up happening is you literally lose the long game, because the long game, you got to have your absolute haves and musts, and then you look at, okay, we got that stabilized. What do we have in the future, like from forecasting? I think prioritization is absolutely the most important thing, and to sit down with the teams and to say, this is happening. What's going to get us through? And when you have that, you're like everything, you're compartmentalizing
yeah.
versus instead of doing this, you're like, hey, this is all we need.
One bite
Perfect.
at
And
a
we can,
time.
that's it. That's it. And no one gets mad at you because of that.
Yeah, that's really good. I don't think I actually wrapped my head around that until now, because the one thing that came into my head right when you said that was because I work quite closely with our purchasing group just because of some of the stuff I've had in the past to do. And what I don't think people give enough credit to is how many bosses you all have in supply chain, right? So the grenades are coming over the fence from everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
when you say prioritization, it makes a lot of sense because when it gets crazy busy, everyone needs everything right now.
Yes. Yes. 100%. It is. And here's the thing. When you do that prioritization, those types of interactions, they get greatly reduced, because in most cases, they're all aligned too. You're going to have, listen, it's not going to be perfect, but I mean, I always believe that it's prioritized. And we've done this recently, order prioritization. I go, well, if we know that our team's going to need it in the shop within 3 weeks, why are we ordering stuff that we need in January? And
Oh,
everyone looks at me and go, this is not hard. And they're like, well, yeah, but we're going to need it. I go, I'm with you. You're going to need it. But what you need is in November. And we started to kind of look to that a little bit, but we also got the right people involved to say, hey, if this is your priority, tell me now. If it's not, then we can shift. We can get a little more nimble of our approach. But I agree with you. I think it reduces a lot of that noise. I always felt that it did. It has started to, in a lot of our functions, because if they know it and the organization's aligned, to know, by the way, if it's an absolute mission critical project for the organization, no one's bothering you. They know that
yeah.
it's exactly what you're working on. So
That's so interesting because we are going through some of that. We switched ERPs not too pretty recently, and it has uncovered that we have a due date issue. And what I mean by that is the priority of when it's actually due, right? So you know me, I'm big on dates, right? And then my purchasing group and myself are getting stressed out about things that don't need to be here right now, and it's also taking up floor space that we could be using to fabricate in, right? So like,
Yep.
let's
Yep.
make dates are real. They are real things that cause real stress. Let's treat them that way.
100%. I believe that when you put in arbitrary dates, and I'm dealing with that issue right now. Uh, and in most cases, it's our operations management team, which is, again, I get it. I understand that. I
Totally.
understand what they want to do. Get it in the system. It's ordered. I feel good about it. I'm like, yeah, but you're missing the boat here. We now have a storage problem. We now have an inventory problem. To
We now have
me,
a
when
tripping hazard.
that too, that too. Yes, yes, I've seen that. It's like, and I got that. I had that rude awakening a couple weeks ago. When I'm like, do you really need all those? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, if we ordered them and you wanted them, but again, to your point, exactly. I having accuracy in dates also aligns people the right way. But you're 100% right. The prioritization of the orders and how that impacts, because the shop's aligned, you're aligned, your supply chain team's aligned, and it flows a lot easier. Brandon, until you get like that down to like a forecasting science, which is something that always comes in there that actually jabs the system, right? It's like it's
Yeah,
we have to have this in here, or it could be emergent, but I would feel like prioritization, not to beat a dead horse here, but it is so imperative
I
in
love that.
any type
You
of
just gave me more ammo to what I've been screaming about for like the last 2 weeks because I am so date heavy and it's just so important. And when we start taking those seriously, it just makes everything so much easier.
100%,
So
100%.
that's good. So kind of a piggyback off of that, why is there, and I'd ask probably a salesperson the same question, why is there always stress between ops and supply chain? Where do you think the rub is?
The rub in that is based on delivery
Hmm.
because they wanted it yesterday. That's going to be the ops way, which is
So is
fine.
that planning? It's going to be all these things, but there's always going to be mistakes. But is it a planning problem? Is it a I just need to check it off my list, like you said, right? And I know it's going to be here, right? Because I have 1,000 things to do, and I have so much respect for that because I've been in that seat. So where do you sit in that whole? Because I know you have extreme empathy for that side of things, but you also have to take care of your side of things and your people. So yeah, keep going. Sorry, it just came into my head.
No, 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 no. Listen, I appreciate it. Your comments are spot on to that effect. So the rub is there's two things here. I always felt that if it's not planned appropriately, basically the solution was to just pound supply chain and expedite, expedite, expedite.
Yeah,
Like I always joke around, I'm like, if you want an expensive expediter, give me a call. But that's not what we should be doing. But we always look at, to your point, there is this almost default to say, well, I ordered everything
Hmm.
and it'll all come in one nice bow at be it the project, be it at your shop. It doesn't work that way because everything varies in lead time. The planning is always the crux. The planning to me is where that is the underlying issue between both sides. And the processes, it doesn't matter how complex you want it to be. If you're in lockstep with your operations team from a planning perspective, you will crush it every single time. And
Yeah.
you and I have been on those ones where it's planned, it's executed. You're just basically you're on the train and you're going.
It's
I
easy.
always yeah, it is easy. And I get a lot of, well, this is cumbersome. It's really not cumbersome. If you plan your work,
Yeah.
like I said, you start well, you end well, right? I always felt that when I always looked at root cause or an issue, right? I always try to look inward with stuff like this because we want them to be successful. That's another thing. There always seems to be this crux of, well, sometimes people aren't delivering or they're not doing it, in spite. No, they're not. They're
Right.
not doing that. Any supply chain professional wants the stuff delivered. doesn't want you to be hassling them because of it. They want things to work out so you're successful. I've had those conversations. It's never done in spite. But the fact is, I think the planning piece is really, to me, um, the biggest, almost a differentiator between the two. If you have it right, you execute. Um, that's the rub, because in other cases it's planning, but it's also understanding. And I know you may jump out of your seat on this, understanding the final scope of work, what
Mm.
the deliverables are, and everyone's in lockstep. I've always found it, and again, this kind of coincides with your planning. If you know the requirements and it's explicit, you're not going to run into a lot of problems, and it's confirmed and it's justified, and you can roll great. But I always find that those are the two biggest root causes: is the planning and the requirements portion. I see that now.
Yeah.
We're very quick to, well, this doesn't conform to the requirements. I go, okay, got it. Why was that? And they're like, well, did we do a spec? Did we send it? Yeah, we did. Okay, great. Oh, well, by the way, we didn't send the latest rev. I go, okay, do you think that might be the root cause? Yeah, that's probably the root cause. Got it. Okay, how do we fix that?
Yep.
But yeah, that is, it is, it's like anything else. I mean, you were on that side. Hell, you were the one doing the same thing, picking up the phone. Hey, I need this. We got to get this out here. Got it. Those are those emergent situations. But I always felt if it's more holistic and it's like, hey, here's the job, here's the award, here's the bill of materials, here's this, and
Yep.
don't tell me it takes too much time, because it does not take too much time. You and I've been through that. When
It'll
you got the
save you.
right people in the room, it saves
Yeah.
you. And
Hmm.
to me, it's the planning and the requirements portion that is what brings a lot of the tension with operations and supply chain. And there's also, the more and more you got me thinking about this, brand, is the education. It's the
Ooh. Mm.
education. Um, there's this assumption that we'll just go buy it. A little more complicated than that. Um,
That's really
it,
good. Yeah. I don't, I
it,
don't, that there's not, there isn't as much understanding of how difficult or not. It can be stressful. It is very relationship. Not everybody wants to deal with that. Sometimes you got to call in favors. You got to have friends to call favors into.
yeah. And again, to your point, I think, uh, it helps to have those types of things involved with, just gaining that education, because, you know, there's a process, right? There's a process for everything. And I always joke and say, if you needed something right now, I could tell you, we'll order it, we'll get it done, but you got to give me the information I need to do it. Well,
Yeah.
why can't you just go and order it? Well, no, it's a lot more to it. I don't want us to get into that. So yeah, there's always going to be that type of, conflict from time to time. I'm happy to say that doesn't happen all that often as much. I think we do find that in some cases, going back to what we talked about previously, um, a lot of it, the root cause is just planning.
Yeah.
It really is planning. I hate to be elementary about it, but man, Brandon, it is planning. And when it's planned and it's done, it's great.
And clients, this goes for you too. You caused this issue as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, we don't want to figure out. We don't want to go about that, right? I mean, it is on. Um, it's just one of those situations where, uh, clients are the same way. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
it's the same way. They have a scope, and it's easy for
Kind
them to
of.
say, well, yeah, they have a scope, yes, um, and we're expected, just like you are, to just mold it and send it,
That's
and
right.
it's perfect, and then you find out that this is what you want, and then we have to go back again. So yeah, I got it. I got it.
Personal development, continuous improvement. I know continuous improvement is a word you and I probably lived quite a bit in our previous roles. It was a big, I would say, value of the company we were with. Um, how do you continue that growth now? And what would you say to someone who's starting out in their career and like what to focus on? Like, are you a reading person? Are you a seminar person? Like, what does that look like for you?
Reading is good in terms of just understanding base concepts, like how from how things start to how things finish. As far as I'm concerned, it gives you a more holistic approach. I always feel like, for instance, like I'm a like basically a lifelong member of the Institute for Supply Management.
Mm,
Been in that for 20 ever since I started, and I was told by my mentors like, uh, you will not learn how this business works until you go here and you learn great assets for seminars, for basically any type of papers, anything that you need relative to market intelligence. I mean, to me, it's basically that organization is your library,
mm,
and you don't there's no reason why you can't use it. And I have. Um, Again, we have a report on business that I research every single. My team who are members, they have it. I'm like, I want to know, and I love it because I know you have a book club, which I think is fantastic. By the way, I may steal that. Um, but when we have our all hands discussions or something like that, we have a person who's an analyst, and that's what they do. They do market intelligence.
yeah,
And if
brilliant.
you think they don't pull that article, I'm the one who specifically makes sure that they do, because I'm like, hey, this is like the Bible over here. You got to use it. So seminars to me are very, very valuable.
Okay.
I think a lot of conferences work very well. They've gotten so much more. The ease of use the accessibility is tremendous. Like,
Yeah,
you don't
agreed.
have to spend thousands of dollars. You got a couple hours a day. If you want to break out a Friday for 2 hours, 3 hours, you can do all of that. And
Yeah,
it
great.
really goes a long way with development. And I still do it. I still have to maintain my CPSM, which I'm glad it's not like, hey, we'll give you a lifetime cert and you don't have to do continuation education hours. Excuse me. The most important thing is it's so vital for development, because you understand the pulse of the industry. You'll pick up stuff,
Mm.
even though it may be unrelated, Brandon. But yeah, I always feel that seminars is the way to go.
Yeah, I'm big on peer groups. I think peer groups, one, you talked about perspective and being less ignorant. Like, my peer group gives me such perspective when I'm wrapped around the axle about something I can't get out of my head or out of my own way. Man, drop that bomb in there. I got a bunch of other leaders in that group. They're just like, why are you so worried? I'm like, what? Why am I so worried? Like, it's just
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I
it's
love that.
great. It's great.
Mentorship. What's one piece of advice you often find yourself giving to young professionals starting in their careers?
Pick up the phone.
Nice.
Pick up the phone. Um, I could tell you, I was one of our key customers, not customers, excuse me, one of our suppliers who's a partner of ours, um, invited me to visit them a couple months ago, and it was their sales folks. I thought it was awesome. They invited me. They're a great partner, great company, and they said, "Hey, would you mind spending an hour with our sales reps?" I said, "Sure." I said, "Is there anything you want me to talk about?" They're just going to ask you questions, and you find out very quickly that, how do I get in the door? How do I do this? And I said, and I basically just, went very quickly. I said, "You see this?" And they're like, "Yeah." I said, "Pick up the phone and actually call,
Mm,
even if it's the reception, even if it's the admin. It doesn't matter who it is. Do your research prior to the company, even if it's just a cold call. Find out who the key players are and ask for those people. Simply calling up and asking for supply chain or procurement is not going to help you. If you know the name, you get a gateway into this. When I get a phone call, I'm getting a phone call for a reason. Someone
yeah.
knows it's me. Um, Having that discussion on the phone, Brandon, is so much more powerful. It really goes a long way. And the looks I got when I gave that response to that, basically a bunch of inside outside sales right out of college, great group of folks, were like, "Oh, really?" I go, "Email's not going to work." I said, "You don't even want to know how many emails I get in a given day, nor anyone else in my position." I said, "The fact is, you really put yourself in a much better spot to have a conversation
Mm,
prior to walking into someone's office, to know who that person is, to talk to them, because you will find out very quickly, okay, this is the right person that I should be talking to. Hey, this is who I need to gain a relationship with." I really think picking up the phone, uh, and not to be, that too old. That's kind of the way I look at it. There's no new school like the old school when it comes to communication. You pick up the phone, you understand completely what's going on, uh, and you also find out very quickly, hey, this is the right person I need to talk to, and I really genuinely think that people appreciate that.
Mm,
But again, you need to do the research prior to picking up that phone, and
yeah.
you know, just not looking it up and saying, oh, this is picking up the phone. It's to me, it's powerful. It really is. I believe that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I try to, when I get a lot of sales solicitations, especially through LinkedIn, like they'll ask me, uh, "Yeah, can we get on a call?" And I said, like, no. I said, my way of communication for people I don't know is through DMs until I get to the point where I'm comfortable enough, where we can have something beyond that. But,
Sure, nothing wrong with that.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that because I think a phone call is very personal, right? And I
Hmm.
think when you're at that level, you're golden, right? Then it's a whole different situation, and I'm
Yeah.
totally with you there. Or just walking out if you have a problem and talking to someone face to face, right? Like
Yeah.
fuck the email, just go talk to them and sort it out.
I'm with you. I am the two. Is it the two email? Yeah, it's the two email limit. If I see two people back and forth on two emails, one of two things happen. One is I call the person who's perpetrating the email and tell them to stop, go down the hallway, knock on the door, and have a very adult-based conversation
Brilliant.
so a solution is made. Um, I do that with my folks. You have to, and even I do. I walk right down,
Yeah.
and they're like, I'm like, yeah, I saw your email, but I really didn't read it. Can we sit down and you can explain it to me? And it is funny. You do get it really disarms the person because
Of
they
course.
probably didn't realize what they said. And then when you read, I'm like, man, it's tone deaf, Brandon. You know this.
Yeah,
It's tone deaf.
totally.
Unless you know the person, you love working with the person, you understand. Like, hey, I get it. That's what they need. I'll help them with
Mm.
that. But yeah, I really the email is it has its purpose. It's useful to a certain extent, but man, when your subject line hits like the third rendition and more people are at it, I'm like, all right, we're done here. I don't want it in my
Yeah.
inbox. I'll filter it out and I'll move on. And you just can't. It's not productive.
Yeah, I think the construction industry is actually pretty good at that.
Yeah,
Because I wouldn't have known that, and I don't think I would have grown up like knowing that. I mean, I obviously learned it maybe from my parents or something, but I feel like when you're out on a job site, or even when I was in the office, we all went to see each other. Like when I had a problem, like field foremans aren't the greatest at email. So guess what? If I got to solve my problem, walking out to the site and saying, "Hey, I know you probably
yeah,
didn't get this, but how can we solve this problem?" And I think doing that repetition for the time period, it's so much faster. Even
yeah.
though the email gets there faster, the emotional, you don't get any of the emotion. You can, like you said, I love the disarm word because it's so true.
It is, and you're right. I think when you have those discussions, um, and you go over to that person, it goes it's powerful. It goes so much more a long way, and the person actually knows that you give a shit.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what makes a huge difference to me. So yeah.
love that. Future trends with supply chain. So before we get into the this or that questions, anything you're seeing that anybody in supply chain, or well, everybody's kind of connected to supply chain. You see anything coming with the future that is either awesome or alarming?
I think the thing that I'm starting to see more and more now, that's a little bit more alarming. I want to be positive, but I also want to be realistic too. Um, Freight is becoming and shipping is becoming more and more of an issue. And when I say
Mm,
that, it could be if you're moving stuff, because where I'm at, we do a lot of work with we're all over the world, but I never realized the impact of freight more now than I ever have, because it depends on weight, it depends on what you're shipping. You could be shipping things, if you're shipping things abroad, depending on weight, you're either shipping that via ship, maritime, or you're shipping it via air. Um, it's what's alarming is there's a lot of instability. Like, you probably, if you didn't read it, I mean, last week or 2 weeks ago, you probably went to Costco and you found out, why is there no toilet paper and paper towels? Come to find out, well, the longshoremen went on strike for a couple of days, and immediately, and this is just me, I'm at Costco, our local Costco, and I'm like, they've been on strike for 2 days and suddenly we're out of this stuff. Like, of course, there comes the planning in me. I'm like, you guys didn't plan for this. It's that kind of stuff. There's just been a lot more instability, more on freight and transportation.
Mm,
That has probably led me to concern where, in some cases, where it's so quick to get things, like ship things, like we're in that Amazon mindset. It's something to really look at because getting the material is not as easy as we'd like it to be as what it used to be. I mean, I always felt, the continental U.S. not a problem. But now my mindset moves international, which is very different for me, as you can imagine. But the fact is, I feel like the freight and transportation is definitely a trend that needs to be continue to be looked at because it impacts you. And I think that's something that I've been a little bit more mindful of. The team's been more mindful of, and we continue to look at that. But I'm also seeing a lot more companies now that used to do a lot of offshore and sending stuff out. We're kind of seeing a resurgence in vertical integration, which is awesome. Again, we're kind of diversified in our portfolio with a lot of the companies we work with, but things that we used to actually have to go to 3 or 4 suppliers for, well, other suppliers are kind of catching on, saying, we're bringing this more in house. We would be more vertically integrated. So that's actually a big positive for the market. Companies are starting to invest more in themselves,
awesome.
and their capabilities. So yeah, when I look at that, vertical integration is becoming a big deal, and it's a huge
Mm,
value add for us. Yeah.
that's awesome. All right, we're going to do some quick fire this or that. So whatever one comes to you quickly. All right, so negotiation style, hardball tactics, or smooth win-win deal. I think you already answered this one.
Yeah, smooth with one deal. Yeah.
Window seat or aisle seat when you travel?
Oh, it's an aisle seat. Aisle
Same,
seat
dude.
has to be.
Give me that
Has
leg
to be.
room. Let me get hit
There
by
is
the drink
there,
cart.
there's no such thing as leg room anymore. It's brutal. Give me the aisle. Help me. Just if I can put at least an appendage out in the aisle, I feel really good about myself. It's sardines.
Favorite supply chain challenge, logistics puzzle, or supplier relationship jigsaw?
Oh, supplier relationship jigsaw. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Working style, or early morning meetings or late night strategy sessions?
Early morning. Bring it.
Save. Let's go.
Bring it. Bring it early morning. If you can't get up early, you're already losing the day. That's what I say. My kids look at me different. My wife can't understand why am I up as early as I am. And I just shake my head. I said, because I'm ahead of you. And they all just start laughing. Of course, they just
Dude,
completely
the
different.
mornings are quiet and beautiful.
It's the best
Uh,
thing ever.
team bonding, office golf tournament, or supply chain escape room?
I would say neither. We do dinners. We
Nice.
do dinners. Supply chain team, we do dinners. We do a lot of dinners. I learned that over the last couple of years. It disarms everybody. You're out of
That's
the
great.
office, sit down. Where are we going? You're picking. I'm not picking. You guys know the area better than I. Um, a lot of some people like golf, some people don't. I'll do it. I don't care. I'll hack away. But we have folks that are just like, let's just do dinner,
Yeah.
and we try and do it early to accommodate people with kids. I love dinners. Dinners are great. That's where you
Yeah.
decompress and talk. It's awesome.
I love it. I love dinners too. Coffee all day or green tea boost?
Coffee in the morning, not green day, green tea in the afternoon. Yeah,
Okay, love
with
that.
some green day too if you want to really rock out. So
Beach
all three.
vacation, beach vacation or mountain hiking?
It's beach vacation. Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Meeting the deadline but stressed or missing the deadline but
I
chill?
would say meeting the deadline but stressed. I
Of
mean,
course.
it's. I,
We're in construction. We gotta.
yeah, I don't understand how you can. I'm trying to really understand where you're going there, Brandon, because you're missing the date and you're chill. Well, I'd be chill too, but the door's probably open for me to leave my job. I mean,
Oh my gosh,
and
superpower.
yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'm really I'm struggling with that one. I mean, maybe you have an exit strategy that I don't know of, but yeah,
Hey,
that's not an option.
just a question. Superpower, being able to see the future market trends or teleport to your supplier meetings instantly.
Market trends.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, market trends. It
You'll
just
you'll you'll sardine it. I don't care.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
All right. Relaxation mode, reading supply chain news or catching up on a football game.
Catching up on a football game all day. Doesn't matter.
P-H-E-L-E-S.
It's not actually, yeah, as I am a tortured Eagles fan from the back. I love college football. I'm actually very happy I get to watch Georgetown on Saturdays, and they're on
Nice.
ESPN Plus, or the Ocho as you would call it. I don't care. They're watching it, and my kids come out and they look at me and they're like, "Oh, Georgetown's on." I go, "Yep, they're on. I'm here. I'm watching it." I am quiet. The dogs are next to me. No one's saying anything, and I'm just there. So, and I yell at the TV, so it works out fine.
No, same. I do watch football as well, just a different kind on Saturday mornings, and it's
Yes,
not Georgetown. Understood.
I understand. I understand.
Uh, well, Craig, thank you for coming on. It's pretty interesting because not everybody wants to do this, and when I asked you, you kind of jumped at the chance. And I haven't had anybody talk about supply chain. I know people may be like, "Who cares?" But I think the world has taught us that it is so critical on so many levels. So thank you for
Yeah.
coming on.
No, I appreciate it.
Do you have anything you want to promote?
No, not at this point right now. I really appreciate you having me on. It's great to catch up with you. Happy to see you where you're going, man. It's just a pleasure. So no, nothing to promote, but yeah, just continue down the path, brother. I appreciate you having me.
Perfect, man. Thank you so much for coming on. See ya.
You got it.